Hi, I'm Barbara O'Brien. I'm an animal trainer and photographer, and I'd like to welcome you to The Empathetic Trainer. Hi, this is Barbara O'Brien, and welcome back to the Empathetic Trainer podcast. Today I'm talking with Amelia Thomas, author of What Sheep Think About the Weather. It's a thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly practical book about how animals communicate and how much we miss when we're not paying attention. Amelia is a journalist turned farmer who went looking for answers across science, intuition, and daily life with animals. Full disclosure, I talked with her while she was writing the book, and somehow my phrase, happy them up, became a chapter title, and I feel oddly honored. This conversation is about slowing down, listening better, and letting animals show us who they really are. So let's get started. Welcome, Amelia.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
We're just really glad to have you. I'm going to show everybody your book. Hopefully everyone can read the title clearly. I love the picture of a Suffolk sheep, which we'll talk about later, but I love the picture of a sheep wearing a trapper hat. Looks just like if she'd fit into Wisconsin really well. So just where we are. And you're in Nova Scotia, so we're both experiencing winter at the same time. So,
that's right. Yes. Yeah. The joys of frozen ground.
Okay. Well, so I want to just kind of start with a big picture question. What first made you wonder if animals were trying to tell us something we weren't hearing?
You know, over my life, even as a child, I was bringing home the animals that didn't have a home or that I found somewhere that were injured. And, I had always had that feeling that if we listened a bit better, that we would be able to sort of figure out a little bit more about have an easier relationship between us and the animals that we share our lives with. And I have tended to end up with all the animals that nobody else wants. So, like the cats from the street, horses that have what many humans would consider behavioral problems, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And, those questions sort of built inside me, but it always felt like such a huge topic to dive into for a book, where to start even with this question. It's so huge. And then the day that we moved into our farm, me thinking that my farming ancestry would sort of give me access to this sort of wonderful, easy knowledge about how to live with the animals around us. And that did not happen at all. I was completely humbled by the fact that everything went wrong and animals escaping and fighting and behaving in bizarre ways that I couldn't figure out.
And every new farmer everywhere.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Well, that's good to hear. So that was the day that I really started sort of deep diving. I said, I'm going to give myself a year. And I figured it would take a year to go into all these different avenues that question, what are animals trying to say to us humans, sort of opens up. So that's what I did. I spent a year. Well, I mean, I'm still doing it, but for the purposes of the book, I spent a sort of a deep diving year, and that's how we sort of connected. And I got to learn from your wisdom, and lots of other interesting scientists, ethologists, trainers, trackers. All these people in all these different spheres, and then managed to sort of bring that somehow together into a coherent narrative.
No, you did talk to all kinds of people. It's funny, before we started, we were talking about how we have a lot of people in common. You've talked to people who have been on my podcast. You've talked to people who have podcasts that I really admire. And and those are more of the people that are kind of on the intuitive side of looking into how animals think and feel. And then there's the whole scientific side, which is completely fascinating to me. I'm not like that, but I admire the work they're doing and that makes sense. Or that I see that. And so I love how you've combined both things and why your book is interesting and not like what I would think a dry science book. And I'd be like, because like you are, sharing your life experiences as you're talking to the people. Like I went and I talked to this person, and then this happened on the farm, and then I talked to this person, and this happened on the farm, and you had all these cool adventures and got to go to cool places. So I kind of think that's wonderful. But it was it makes the book a really interesting read because we feel like we're right there with you when you talk about the animals on your farm. I'm like, that's what pigs are like. Yep, that's what horses are like. So it's really relatable. So it's not a science book, but it's not a woo-woo book where it's completely woo-woo, kind of like out there and like, oh, I'm not sure, someone might be more skeptical. You kind of back up the things that all of your people are saying. You kind of, you have the references and the backup information there. So it's pick it up, everybody. Go give it a read. If you're into animals, you really need to check this book out.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I think you sort of said it, but so that really kind of stopped being curiosity and then it sort of turned into a book. Is kind of where we're at, right?
That's right. Yeah. I tackled, as you're saying, science. I'd sort of tackled science first because that was the area that I probably definitely felt most intimidated by. Not a natural scientist, but all these kind of concepts of listening and what it means and what animals can say, and the ways that they say it and how much they can communicate with humans have their basis in science. So I felt like it was sort of important to go there first, even though it was the most sort of unfamiliar territory for me. To then sort of build upon that. And turns out that actually it wasn't as intimidating as I thought it would be. The scientists who are working in that field are really, really interesting, like super passionate.
Oh, yeah. Well, they wouldn't be working in it unless they cared about animals. I mean, they wouldn't be there. Why do you care about birds if you aren't interested? So...
Yeah,
I can see that. It's like, oh my gosh, all these other podcast guests, just because they're all so fascinating. Okay, so apparently in your past you were a travel writer, which is part of why you get to do these cool adventures. So that's kind of neat. So in your past life, you went from travel writing to farm life. So how did animals change the way you see the world? Because those are kind of two different things.
Well, they're not actually that different because. On our travels, I worked a lot for Lonely Planet, but I also worked for some magazines.
That's right. You were a contributing writer for Lonely Planet. That's cool.
Right. Yeah. And we lived for quite a few of the books that I wrote. I wrote quite a few books about India, and we lived in a village in India for that time, where animals are sort of part of everyday life. So, there are monkeys showing up on your balcony, all kinds of birds around, water buffalo, cattle. It was a rural village where there were pigs as well, chickens, and then there were all the sea life that you'd encounter if you went snorkeling, that kind of thing. So animals were kind of and then occasionally an elephant or animal, and we rescued quite a lot of sort of stray puppies and cats there too. Yeah. So those two things really sort of went together, and I never really went that far away from sort of this question of like living with animals when I was traveling. I wrote a book about a true story about a zoo, which kind of came from a newspaper article that I wrote.
And what can you share with us the name of that book, please?
Oh yeah, that's called The Zoo on the Road to Nablus, and that's a kind of a sort of sad, but weirdly hopeful story about the last zoo, the last Palestinian zoo. So it's in the West Bank in Palestinian territories. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I wrote some articles which were really fun for sort of magazines about where I got to go riding in Belize and in northern Canada and all kinds of things. So animals never. I remember one really wonderful moment when we were in Jordan and next to Petra. There's beautiful old ancient remains. There are Bedouin guys who give pony rides, and they call them pony rides to tourists, but they're actually their own race horses. So they have, they're super well trained, very, very docile. They'll take a small child on their back and lead them around in this beautiful setting. And then at the weekends, they're their own personal, horses for having fun and racing.
To kids pony, Of course, they're Arabians, I assume. So naturally, the temperament can do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I said, "Oh, could I have a ride?" And he said, "Yes." And I started riding, and he said, "Oh, you can ride." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm not a great rider, but yes, I can." And he said, "Oh, off you go then." And so my children watched me sort of galloping off into the desert. So that was how travel writing managed to be completely combined with the animals that I met along the way. So the goal was always to have a farm, but we also like to travel, and we still travel a lot for work. So yeah, those two things can actually live together.
That's cool. Sorry, the new puppy that you can, if you're watching the podcast, is like bumping my microphone. I think I have to reverse his position, otherwise his nose is right. Sorry for the noise here.
He's very cute.
His nose is right in the microphone, and we can't have that. So
what's his name?
His name is Kipling.
Kipling.
Actually, Rudyard Kipling. So there's our India connection right there.
Yes.
Because he is always ready for adventure.
Oh. And another little connection, my sister actually lives right next to Rudyard in England, which is where Rudyard Kipling got his name. Tiny little place.
Fun. Well, Kip is such a great name for a dog.
Oh, it is.
Kip.
Yeah.
Sounds like Chip, so they always come running. So that's great. Okay. What surprised you most when you really slowed down and paid attention when it comes to animals?
I think probably the biggest surprise that I had was how similar we are to animals that seem nothing like us at all. So, our shared genetic history could be millions of years ago, but we have these commonalities in even in the most basic terms of sort of feeling pleasure, feeling fear, those kind of primal emotions go even as small as fruit flies, which is quite amazing.
Right. I mean, I've heard from Warwick Schiller, actually, he said something like, well, we're all mammals, which, he had learned. Like, at least the mammals all experience, things similarly. Never thought to transfer that to like all living things.
Yeah.
And there are, this is a fascinating commonality like you're talking about. So.
Yeah. And also, the something surprising that I think and really thrilling that I discovered from talking to a few scientists was that even these tiny creatures, like, a cloned fruit fly, will be different from another cloned fruit fly where actually they're supposed to be identical. That's why they clone them. But brain wiring, which is pretty much just like a chance, it's just a dice roll. How the brain wires itself together when it's being created makes these differences. So as much as we have these commonalities with creatures that seem nothing like us at all, these creatures that look identical also have individual traits that are different from each other. So those when you kind of balance those two things, it just kind of makes you really appreciate even these tiny little creatures that are around us all the time that I think I probably hadn't really appreciated before.
Oh, that's who thinks about fruit flies, right? But someone has, and someone studied them. So pretty cool. All right, let's talk about the book a bit again. The title, What Sheep Think About the Weather, is wonderful. What does it mean to you?
Well, actually, you're very much connected to that title because we were at a point where we have quite a lot of animals that really enjoy rain very much. Like we've got a dog she's a big dog and she hates rain to the point that you may have to carry her outside when it's raining.
Goodness, yeah.
And we have some meadows that I wanted to try and figure out what kind of animal would work well in the meadows. Something that we have, we live in rainy places. It's cold all the time, most of the year.
Like Wisconsin sometimes,
yeah. And so I didn't want to bring into the farm any more animals that really can't stand rain, for example.
Oh, that's funny. Let's see. Must handle rain or whatever. That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, your prerequisite, So
I asked you, what do sheep think about the weather? Because as I was thinking, well, maybe we'll add some sheep. Yeah. And so what sheep think about the weather sort of stuck. And publishers liked it too. And that's where the title came from.
Well, if you happen to look at that chapter, we talked about how the sheep do not seem to mind the rain so much. And they don't seem to mind the snow so much unless it's terribly cold. But if it's really windy,
yes,
then the boss sheep, Lady Margaret, says, nope, we're all staying in it because they have choice to go in or out. And she just stands in the doorway and goes, nope, too much wind today, too much wind for now. We're going to stay in. And I just thought that was interesting. Now, that could be my small flock. I don't know, but mine have a choice. So.
I have actually asked some other people and they agree with you.
Oh, okay, good.
I've met some sheep along the way, I've said, so does this hold true for your sheep? Yes, it seems to be a universal sheep trait. But I love the fact that Lady Margaret decides for the flock. She's like,
she's the biggest one.
Guys, I know what to do.
I'm going to pop this puppy back in this kennel. So he's getting a little restless. There you go. He's sitting on the crate on the table right next to me because Australian Terriers are bred to be with you, and that's his happy place. Also, excellent ratters, and we're bred to kill snakes. And I thought, we're going to be a useful puppy. I didn't have snakes. But Anyway, so back to sheep briefly, because that's what we did talk about besides animal actors, which was really fun to talk about too. But the sheep, we talked about how how if you're still and quiet, sheep can learn to trust you, and then they want to come around and they will communicate with you. And it was very gratifying that after our conversation, and that you had traveled somewhere where there was another flock of sheep, and how you practiced the same thing where you said quietly, this herd did not know you, and then they came and they sat down around you. And I just thought, like, oh, that's wonderful. I mean, if we all, I happen to love sheep, so anytime anyone is more thoughtful about sheep, it's great. So anyway, that was just really gratifying to see that it was actually worked with other people. It wasn't just my imagination. So
yeah, it did. Yeah, I did this little flock. I didn't know we were staying in an Airbnb and on a farm. And yeah, I went outside and followed your advice and exactly what you said that you do. And yeah, it worked. It's, I think a lot of listening better to animals is exactly that, isn't it? It's slowing down.
Any animal, yeah.
Being quiet, and then working on their time frame rather than our human time frame, which tends to be much faster. We're like, okay, what's going to happen now?
You know this about cats, I'm sure, and so does a lot of our listening audience. When you go to a house that has cats, and if you don't like cats, right? You sit in your chair and you're like, oh, I don't want that cat to come near me, okay? Because I don't like cats. What does the cat do?
Oh,
he's
instantly.
absolutely going to come near you because you're not giving off the vibe of, I'm going to grab you and pet you and hold you and love you forever and kiss your face. You're kind of letting the cat on it. So that's the most fun to watch people who aren't fond of cats be just, mobbed by cats because if they just instead would give off the energy of like, no, the cat would stay away. But it's so true, right? So curiosity is such a universal trait. So if we feel safe, then we can, everything. If we feel safe, we can be curious. And,
yes.
and that's why it's so much fun to train horses and dogs and chickens and other mammals, because I'm not familiar. I always thought lizards couldn't love, so I don't know about training lizards. But the other animals, if you let them be curious, then if we're curious back, exactly what your book is about, what are they trying to tell us? I mean, lessons learned, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And anyone who has horses knows that exactly what you say. You allow them a little bit of curiosity, allow in the sense that, traditionally people were like, no, you just do what you're told.
Stay in your space.
Yeah.
Don't get out of my space.
Yeah. You kind of open up to this curiosity and that's where sorts of magic lies in your relationship with horses, especially because they're so attuned to all our signals. If we can be as attuned to their signals as they are to ours, and then kind of allow that space in between for your mutual for fun and curiosity and noticing things, then I think that's where you get to. That's where the wonder lies, isn't it?
Yeah. We all have examples. I'll just do a quick brief one. I have these mares, Morgan horses, old style Morgan horses, very compact and smaller, but solid. Anyway, they came from a ranch in Montana. And so they were in wide open spaces. And the one mare that came was a watcher. Her job was to kind of, it's a big herd, 60 horses, and just to be aware all the time. So when she came, she had a lot of anxiety about the horizon and anything on the horizon and everything. And when I was growing up, it was like, don't let horses get in your space. Don't let its nose get close to your face, because safety things to be sure. But now, of course, that I understood body language so much more and can read a horse so much better, thanks to all the things I've been learning from the kind of people you interviewed in your book. I would come home from working on set all day and I'd smell like 20 dogs, different dogs from all day on my animal actors. And because I let her be close and she would sniff me from head to toe, like, who have you been with today and what have you been doing? And her curiosity was just amazing. And you could read her body language that it was no harm intended. And she felt so much safer that she could check out what all those odd smells were. We built the relationship on like, yes, you can be here. And, it's an ongoing thing, but it's horses, as their sense of smell is as good, if not better than dogs. And we never thought about that before. So, wow. Right. That was Lucy Ree's book, I think, about horses' brains. But I learned a lot from that book too. Okay. So listening, when you say listening to animals, what does that actually look like?
Well, yeah, it's not literal always. It can be, but listening can be, like we just mentioned, looking at the tiny signals like body language, what people call calming signals in dogs or in horses, and Warwick Schiller calls stress indicators. So same sort of thing, looking at, listening, I think, in terms of our relationship with animals is just, again, it comes back down to noticing. So it can be as subtle as noticing which direction your dog's eyes are looking in. That they may be trying. Well, first of all, what they're interested in, but also they may be trying to sort of show you something by the way that they're looking.
Remember, Timmy's in the well, Lassie. Timmy's in the well.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. It worked for Lassie. So listening encompasses. It can be with your ears, but it can also be using all your senses. So it's a sort of very general kind of term to mean openness to understanding or trying our best to understand what an animal is trying to sort of communicate to us in whatever way they communicate. So, like I mentioned in the book that in the 1960s, there were all these sort of experiments done with chimps and with parrots where they were really interested in, researchers were very interested in figuring out how much of a human language those animals could use, not just parrot, but use. But nowadays people seem, including science, has kind of gone away from that and is much more interested in how we can listen into their, in an inverted commas, language, rather than can they learn ours. So that's a really heartening shift in, that you see more now in the horse world as well, that we're, like you said, it's not like get out of my space anymore. It's like, being curious, what does this behavior mean? What are they saying with that?
Yeah.
What communication or miscommunication is there between us that's creating that thing that we may think is undesirable? Like, so it's sort of, so it's a very long answer to the question that listening is basically just noticing.
Exactly. Well, let's we'll delve into science and intuition here. You talked with scientists and more intuitive folks. Where do these worlds overlap?
There are some amazing overlaps between those two worlds. So, on the one hand, you might say, okay, a scientist is interested in data and in controlled variables. And then somebody working in an intuitive realm is the opposite, right? So you might think they were sort of polar opposites. But actually, I spoke to Denise Herzing. She's a dolphin researcher. She works with wild dolphins in the Caribbean. And she talked to me about how intuition has always played like an important part in science, and scientists have tended to have their eureka moments just by, there's this kind of, I have a feeling that this might be the case, or this, I feel like this might work. And then,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's one like really important parallel between the two, is that scientists actually maybe don't even necessarily recognize that they're using intuition, or may do, but the intuition comes into science and big discoveries. And then I spoke to with a tracker in South Africa who works with San tribesmen, quite a lot, some trackers in the Kalahari. And he said his belief is that tracking, the art of tracking and like listening to animals through following very subtle signals in nature is actually the origin of what Western empirical science, because trackers trailing an animal through a desert environment or not prairie, but a grassland, are using coming up with theories and then testing out those theories and changing those theories.
Beginning of time, really.
Yes, yeah. I mean, gathering data, using that data, extrapolating things from that data.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So his belief is that actually tracking was the original science, and so it's not the place of like white coats and pipettes and Bunsen burners that we might think.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Okay, let's see. I'm just kind of going on my questions here, but we have that shared story that when you called about the book, which was really fun. And I said that I was really honored that you had the chapter titled "Happy Them Up," which is a catchphrase I use on set to make sure that animals are happy. And if the animals aren't happy, we don't continue, or we don't do it at all, or any number of things. And in that chapter, you talk a lot about do animals experience joy? And I have to believe that they do, because I mean, we've seen our dogs and our cats in their own way, and horses, exuberance. I don't know so much about wild animals because I don't have a lot of experience personally, but I'm
Uh-huh.
sure that, if they're handled or left alone, probably pretty happy.
Yeah.
So what's stuck with you about that idea? I mean, as far as animals expressing joy, and how do we know?
Yeah, there's so many sort of aspects of life that we think of as sort of our human territory,
Yeah.
and the further you kind of go down this road of listening to different kinds of animals, the more you realize, again, coming back to what we were talking about before about these sort of universals. So, I mean, it's sort of, I think I asked the question, when a bird's singing, do they ever sing because they're happy?
Mhm.
Because I think we tend to think that we're the ones that have that's our domain, these kind of complex emotions. But joy actually isn't really a complex emotion. It's a fairly sort of profound, simple emotion, compared to, I don't know, envy. That's a more complex emotion,
Yeah.
So if animals are feeling beings and we are feeling beings, then it sort of stands to reason that our feelings may be very similar in many ways. And so I think, why wouldn't an animal feel joy? Why wouldn't an animal enjoy the feeling of sunshine on its skin if it's been cold all
Right.
night?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't an animal? I was asking because again, going back to living in India, the cows, the sort of free roaming cows used to congregate on the beach at sunset, and so did
Mhm.
the people. And I always had this feeling like the cows were just enjoying the moment, just like we were. And it's funny because your rational brain goes, no, it's a cow. But on the other hand, why not? That's
Right.
not a complex
Right. But
emotion.
wouldn't skeptics who, warn people like, this is not a person in a fursuit. This is a real, this is an animal, and he can't feel shame, or he can't feel whatever, like what's the word?
Anthropomorphizing. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. For
Yeah.
pronouncing that big word. Especially when I was younger, that was a thing. Like, they don't feel this, they don't feel that. Now, I mean, true, like a puppy can't be naughty. He's being a puppy. He's
Uh-huh.
doing what puppies. So you don't get upset with them for like it was on purpose. That's silly. I mean, they're animals, right? No more than a toddler does things on purpose.
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
so I think the mammals are related there. But how do you push back against, or where's the balance there that where we're not putting things on them that do not belong on them? I mean, they're still animals, but I agree. I mean, I think, yes, of course they feel. I mean, look at lambs jumping around in a pasture, or baby goats. I mean, I've never seen anything happier than baby kids bouncing on little legs. And you'll see other animals like baby foxes, or anything that's young and energetic in the sunshine. They look happy. No, nothing's threatening them at the moment. So the
Yeah.
safety and happiness, which is for every living thing, go hand in hand. But
Mm-hmm.
what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because we still see even adult horses will play. A group of
Yeah.
geldings will run around and play together. Um, yeah, it's a sort of thorny territory, isn't it? Anthropomorphizing, because it isn't frowned upon as much in science as it used to be. So, for
Mhm.
example, Jane Goodall, when she started her career, when she went and researched the first chimps in the wild and came back, and she wrote a science paper and she gave them names and to differentiate them in the science
Mhm.
paper. And the professors were like, you cannot give these chimps names. They're not individuals. They're just chimps. So, obviously we've moved on from that.
Mhm.
We think of those chimps now as individuals in a complex society. As far as it goes, as shame or something like that goes, yeah, those are complicated emotions that require sort of, I would say, a certain sort of mental gymnastics that humans are very good at.
Well,
You
they talk
know,
about our prefrontal cortex
yeah,
versus other
absolutely,
animals. Yeah.
yes. But the feeling of going back to joy, the feeling of feeling happy about something is not really a complex emotion. It's just that we can feel happy for almost no reason or without thinking very much. So is a cow on the beach in India thinking, oh, what makes me happy are those beautiful bands of purple that are mixing with the orange in the sun? No, but is the cow experiencing a feeling of contentment? that may be akin to what we're feeling on the beach as well. If we're not sort of focused on looking at the beauty of the sky, then yes, I think so. So, like everything, it's sort of a question of degrees. But, the fruit fly researcher, he's an Oxford University professor, neurobiology professor, and he told me that fruit flies experience dopamine rushes. So, as we do. So, even on this very chemical level, that's sort of the bringer of the feeling of joy. It's sort of a chemical cocktail in our brains and bodies. And so, if the fruit fly also receives a dopamine rush, or a bumblebee from a pleasant taste, then there's a commonality there that's really, to sort of deny that commonality is a little bit sort of Descartes, where there's us and there's them and they're, and, automatons, and we're the only ones that think and feel. And we have moved on from that.
Yeah, there's been a lot more people like Dr. Susan Fay, who you spoke with, and other people who talk about how horses, especially horses, because, that's what I'm really interested in too, don't like incongruency, which means if we show up with our body saying one thing and our brain saying another, the horse goes, something's not completely whole with you. Therefore, I'm going to be a little worried because you're not presenting, like your body's saying, I'm not afraid and I can do this and blah, blah, blah. And your brain is going, well, the last time I fell off, I broke my pelvis and, I'm coming back now and I'm scared, blah, blah. And the horse goes, we need to be worried about something? And it just kind of builds and builds. So they may not be bringing those feelings on themselves, but they reflect, do you agree that maybe they reflect what we're feeling? And that, certainly, I mean, yeah, it's like every group, for instance, you walk in the woods and the birds start to caw, blah, 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 something going on, an alert. Your body goes, what are we looking for? At least if you're aware.
Absolutely.
So I think there's been this relationship for a long time, which is why, dogs are so wonderful, because bark, bark, bark. And of course, somebody's out there, alarm, or whatever. So I think it's much more complicated and deeper and long lasting than we've ever imagined.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Like, I was thinking about this the other day. So when my husband is out for the evening, let's say the kids are either in bed or they're out, at a friend's house, the dogs will always be on extra alert. And so they'll bark at what I can't see anything outside, I'll go and have a look, there's nothing around. But how do they know to bark on those evenings when he's away traveling for work or something like that, as opposed to an evening where he's just off to the gym?
Exactly.
And so it's sort of similar to how we might feel. This is sort of how I explained in very basic terms the basics of animal communication. I think Kerry Lake explained this to me, to people who don't really understand how that works or are interested, is that if you've ever had the experience where someone walks into the room walks into home, walks in through the door, closes the door, and from across the room or even the next room, you kind of know that there's either that maybe they're in a bad mood or that something's wrong. Before you ever speak, before you even see them, sometimes you just sort of
children can do that for sure.
Yeah. And that's something we share again with the animal world. Like you said, a horse will recognize incongruency, and we may recognize not that. I mean, in that case, it's not even incongruency; it's just recognizing a feeling. And so, I think animals are great at doing that. That's a survival mechanism for them. It's a survival mechanism that's built in for us, like you said, with the example of walking through a wood and hearing a bird call, an alarm call versus a song. So again, what I love about this is there's all these levels of commonality that we do share with species, and ways in which we can connect, which isn't just like, oh, what are they saying in words, or what are we saying in words?
Yeah, I think it's just deeper than we've even thought about, which is why your book's so fascinating. So, highly recommend. Okay, and we just spoke about my other question was why do you think animals respond so strongly to emotional tone? But I think we just covered that, so that's good. Okay, so for someone with just a dog or a cat, what's one small way that you've learned about to listen better?
I think my favorite way to listen better to your cat or dog, and something I did try is, and you may feel silly when you do it, but it's still really fun to do, is Professor Alexandra Horowitz, who's a canine behavior a researcher. She told me, you have to remember, and of course we know this, but it's another one of these sort of underestimated things. You have to remember that their point of view, the way they see and experience the world, is not the same as ours. So, for example, like you said with horses, but applies to dogs. Dogs sort of see the world nose first rather than sight first. You know, they've got just this incredible sense of smell. So she said, best thing to do to get a kind of feeling of how to communicate better with your animal, first try and see the world from their point of view. So that can be physical, like getting down on your hands and knees and crawling around the house and following your dogs, who will look very surprised and suspicious about what you're doing. And just sort of, because things sound different from their point of view, from their physical point of view, you know, things may smell different, things look different.
Well, that's why exactly. No, that's a really good point. Like when talking to the sheep, you get low instead of hovering over them.
Right.
You know? So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And it works definitely with cats and dogs too. I mean, it's a great starting point. Obviously, we can't project ourselves into how it is to be a dog because we're not a dog, but we can kind of, that's a nice like starting point. And at the very least, your dog's going to sort of appreciate that you're wandering around. I did it a lot with sniffing around things because, of course, with them having these amazing sense of smell. And something I found with that, which was really interesting, is actually we can smell things a lot more than we kind of expect that we can. Because I think, you know, most humans, if you ask them which sense could you do without, if you had to give up one of your senses, which one would it be? And many people would say, "Oh, sense of smell. I don't use my sense of smell that much."
I don't know how you eat otherwise, but okay.
Right, true. I think maybe people don't even, recognize that when you've got a cold, things don't taste as much. But actually, we can smell a lot more things than we think we can. So if you wander around the house on your hands and knees with your dog sniffing at things, you'll feel silly, but it does give you a great perspective on their world. So that's my first tip. And then the second one would just be to slow down and not be saying sit, stay, but just hang out. Just hang out and notice what they notice and notice what they're interested in.
That's very calming for horses too, you know.
Well, we do it a lot with horses, don't we? Just sort of standing around, just apparently doing nothing, but actually that is doing more than almost anything you could do.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a funny thing about the sniffing, because you reminded me. I have this new puppy, and I bring him to set with me because he gets socialized and he learns. And he's already had several shoots, so, you know, good boy. But, you know, being a terrier, which is different than herding dogs, I'm learning, because I'm learning all about terriers. I couldn't get him to do a down. You know, he's old enough to understand the concept, and I don't force train. So I wasn't going to like jerk him down and make him stay there. Like, that has to be his idea. And I was having trouble getting him to like grasp the concept of like, you know, we're going to lay down, because he would do everything but lay down. And I was using a treat to lure him and the normal things, right? And one of the art directors who has dachshunds and is familiar with the breeder that I got my Australian Terrier from, and shows her dogs and stuff. So she's a dog person. She said, you have to play with him. You have to make it a game. And I'm like, well, everything I do is a game. Otherwise, we're not going to do it. It's got to be fun. And she goes, no, here. She literally got down on the ground with him. And she did a real fast, like, boom, threw herself down in the shape of a dog. Like she would, and he looked at her and she said, come on, let's go down. And then he went like, this is great. And he lay down like that, like the energy she gave of like, how much fun is it to go down and do this game? And then I was able to quickly shape, this is the action I want. You know, here's the treat. And now he like, boom, flies down. But even though I've been an animal trainer for a long time, right? And I'm evolving and hopefully getting better and more thoughtful all the time, you know, it was mind blowing for her to go, model it for him. Isn't that funny?
That's
now
great.
I can't model chasing a ball so much and, you know, some of the other actions he's going to do. But I was blown away by how simple it was and how the terrier went like, you know. And growing up with horses, the woman that mentored me and I was around the horses with said, don't ever crawl through a fence because the horse will learn how to do it. Crawling through the wires and through the fence. Like, he can't fit through there. Nobody's watching you. And so like when they're learning about new objects, how we react around the new object is also how they learn to react around the new object. I mean, they are watching us just like children are watching us all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, animals learn from watching others. Also in the wild, I mean, that would make sense that you learn from watching what your parent animal is doing or what your siblings are trying out and what happens if they, are they going to tumble down the bank if they play here? Or I'm thinking like with foxes and things like that. So yeah, it would make sense. And it is something fun to try. I like playing with the horses and teaching tricks. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, sure. But if you can't enjoy it too.
Yeah. And if you can't sort of explain what you're doing with, like you were saying, with shaping or with a kind of sort of more conventional methods that you're aware of, it doesn't hurt to just try it yourself and spin around and see if that's something that works. Because I've noticed that one of our horses will watch what we're doing and then will try it himself without the treats, without the cues. He'll just be like, oh, is that what she's trying to do, without just by watching me interacting with a different horse. So yeah, that's also very cool, isn't it? It's just to sort of try and if you know that that's how terriers learn in that case, then that's useful information that you can then, if that's how they see the world, then you can apply that when you're teaching other things. And yeah, it's very beneficial for sure.
It was a lot of fun, and he's different smart than the border collie. I mean, they're just different smart. It's you said you have a terrier yourself, a bull terrier, and a clever dog and different. And boy, it's like cats. It has to be his idea. So it's just so much fun because the border collie and my collie mix, he's a rough collie mix. It's like they're trained. I mean, they're bred to be like, I want to be part of your team and be intuitive, and I'm going to always watch your mood, and I'm going to just do with you. And the terrier's completely different. Like, I want to be with you, but I have some ideas. I have opinions. I was learning about him, and when he complained in his crate, learning how to be crate trained, and it was very vocal. He's not suffering; he's arguing. And I thought that was it just reframed it for me. Because a border collie will never argue. She would die first before she argues with me. Like, well, of course we're going to do. No, he's, but I love it about him. I mean, that's fun. Very cool. That. I mean, so even in same species, different personalities.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I always think that with our bull terrier, when I'm teaching her something, I have to think about I imagine that she's saying, and why?
Why? Oh, very much so with the terrier.
Why are we learning this? What? Not necessarily what's in it for me, but what's the point of this? So, yeah, it's a totally different way of. I've had Dachshunds too, and they were very similar. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. All right. So, as we look back on all this has been a fun conversation. How has this changed the way you live with animals now?
I'm much slower. I've learned to slow down, be patient, and not as results focused as I think I used to be when in terms of training animals. I am noticing this is also something that we talked about, but the commonalities and the within cross species lines, but then also these tiny individual differences between. We did some funny, very rudimentary and very kind experiments with earwigs on the farm to see if they had different personalities. And, a definition of personality is that you would behave in a similar way over different contexts.
Define what an earwig is for unfamiliar.
So an earwig's just a little sort of bug with two pincers on the front. They have this kind of bad reputation because people think of them as, just because of their name, there's old wives' tales about them crawling into your ears and
see my face when we're like,
yeah, and it's not true. It's not true. They were actually named. They think they were named that because of the pincers are similar in shape to part of our inner ear. So
okay,
it's very
about
harmless.
The earwigs. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to define.
We did these very basic kind of experiments based on experiments that a cockroach researcher that I chatted with does, and to see whether these apparently identical earwigs would behave identically, or whether if we, one would do something specific and then we would change the circumstances and see if that one would still do the same kind of thing. And this in a very sort of basic, non-scientific experiments that we did at home, that was the case. So I notice individual differences in species. So even in flies that get stuck in your kitchen, you'll notice that they don't all behave exactly the same. And
wow, to think on that level. I mean, to notice things on that level, it's pretty cool.
It's fun. It's actually useful because if you notice it with flies that are stuck in the kitchen, it's much easier to catch them to put them outside. If you notice that one, bangs itself against the window again and again and again, whereas another one sort of just lazily circles, that's actually useful information in terms of being able to get them in your little cup and with your paper underneath, and then release them outside.
You're awfully kind to the flies. I can't say I'm as kind as to the flies that make it in the house, but no, it's really true because silly example, but many years ago, we worked for a company that was chicken, and so we had to train these chickens to run on a treadmill or to walk on a treadmill.
Wow!
And we had to use their breed of chickens, which would be like a Cornish cross, a very heavy chicken bred for meat. They're not the cleverest of the chicken breeds because they're, they don't live a whole long time. And I mean, it's a whole thing and whatever. But so I went to the hatchery and got 12 of the chickens, adult chickens to work with. And each individual chicken, we took care of. And luckily, because we rescued the 12 of them, they had a happy life after that. But so they didn't end up on someone's plate. But out of the 12, only 2, even with time and patience and shaping and modeling and things, could figure out that if I walk forward on this slow moving treadmill, I can get to the lettuce, which is here. The other ones, there was just like, they're just like, my hand is moving like he's just slowly falling off the treadmill. I mean, he didn't fall,
Right.
but like walking back, couldn't grasp the concept, because why would a chicken understand a treadmill? In nature, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
But there was 2 awfully clever ones, that like,
That's amazing.
if I can move with the treadmill,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very silly business. I usually don't get asked to do those things. That was a long time ago.
But I still think that's a massive accomplishment to be able to train a chicken to walk on a treadmill. That's like that's your the two-way communication there is like incredibly complex.
Chickens, yeah. Well, chickens are way smarter, and birds, because you talk about birds quite a bit in your book, way smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And huge personalities. And this, the whole
Yeah.
thing. I love my chickens.
I love chickens too. We had a chicken called Ivy, and she didn't think of herself as a chicken. She was how people sometimes get chicks through the mail, and so some people
sure.
had got a box of chicks through the mail. She was attacking the others, so we ended up with her and kept her completely separate. And every morning she walked from her home in one place, so she was away from the other chickens, through the house out into the yard. And we had a huge French Mastiff who and all she had to do was look at him. She'd never touched him, but all she had to do was give him this look, and he would go, oh. And he was 120, 130 pounds at least,
Right.
He would cower in the corner and sort of look away, shielding his eyes almost until she'd walked past.
That's funny.
They're very smart, because she knew what she wanted, and she knew she didn't want him near her. So yeah, chickens are very, very, very underestimated creatures, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I think all of them are.
Yeah.
If animals could say one clear sentence to humans, what do you think it would be?
Oh, that's hard. My instant reaction was to say, just be kinder to me. I think that would be probably, but that might be me sort of putting that onto them. But
well, we could all be kinder to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a general rule.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that I think probably it would be that let's all just get along. Everybody just wants to be happy in the end, and I think animals want to be happy and peaceful and
safety.
And
safety,
safe.
and then their needs met. Any living thing makes sense to me, right?
Yeah,
So.
and especially these days, I think it's even more important to be thinking about being kind to others. So that can extend, to humans and to all the creatures with whom we share our lives.
We both know that people who love animals, on the whole, are a little kinder in general.
That's true.
I'm always suspicious if someone doesn't like any kind of animal. I mean, I get it if they don't want, particularly a dog or a cat. But when they go like, "Oh, what's your favorite animal?" No. I'm just like, whoa, okay, sorry, you had a bad childhood, or something happened to you. But anyway, all right, I'm going to show the book one more time, because we all think it's amazing. And so let's talk about where we can find this book. And we will put all your links in the show notes and things like that too. But where can we find this book?
It should be at your local independent bookseller, who, of course, they're very happy always for you to be buying from a small business.
Sure.
It's on Amazon, all the usual places, Barnes and Noble, and then
Sure.
that's in the US, and then elsewhere in the world, in the UK, same thing for sale, sort of on Amazon and in bookshops. It's about to come out in Australia and New Zealand.
Exciting.
So same thing there. And then there's also an audiobook, which we recorded, so that's on Audible. So all the usual places that you can, you can access.
That's good on you. Getting a book published that's not self-published is very hard these days. I have a book myself from years ago, and that's Penguin Random House. But it's a thing to go through. So good on you, because obviously your message is really important, and I hope that people buy tons of these books, because it would help animals. It would just help them if people understood them better. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, we'll put all of your information on the show notes so people can find you. But I really want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. And of course, I'm a little biased because it was fun to be in the book.
Well, it was very fun talking to you, and I still am very grateful that you found time to chat with me for the book.
That part's easy, and then having a sheep on the front just makes me feel very honored. But thank you again for everything. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's been really fun chatting with you.